Hello, I'm Pınar, the owner of the blog Pinitja's World of Books, and today I'm with the author of İnsan Sürümü, 0.4 in Turkish, or as it's known as It's a Brave New World. And today I'm with the author Mike Lancaster here. Hello Mike, thank you. Thank you for sparing the time. So I have my questions ready already, so I'll just start and ask you, can you start with a little bit description about yourself for your readers in Turkey?
Oh, about myself. I write science fiction and have done since I was probably about 6 or 7 years old. It's the genre that I just love, and when I started out writing, I used to write grown-up fiction. But this sort of young adult audience is just such a brilliant, sort of vibrant, sort of people are just forming their opinions on what's good, and there was no science fiction around, and so for a science fiction writer like me, that was just the right thing. But me, I sit at a desk most of my day writing strange stories. So. Just always written, and I still do.
And maybe you can tell a little bit about the one and only book you have in Turkish, the Brave New World of
Certainly. It's a science fiction book based. It all takes place in one day. I wanted to have a science fiction book that all takes place almost in real time. It's a really quick read, and hopefully it takes about the amount of time that the book covers. And it tells of an extraordinary day in human history when 4 people suddenly find themselves out of sync with the rest of the world and have to spend a book trying to find out why that is. It's a plot-driven science fiction novel.
So your target readers are kind of young adults for right now. Is it always going to be like that? Like you're going to stay together with young adult readers all the time? Is that your intention?
I mean, it is the area I love writing in. Because when I write adult fiction, you can write absolutely everything, and people do. When you tailor it to a young adult or teenage market, the things that you write about are slightly more focused, and I just love writing for that age group. I just really do. It's so yes, I will write young adult books.
Okay. And what kind of challenges you face when you're writing for the young adults?
Whether it's relevant, I think, is the most what seems to be relevant to me as a grown-up, as an adult, might not be relevant to a young adult.
Yeah.
So I guess that is the biggest challenge, is making it so that a young adult reader will not only be interested, but hopefully sort of invigorated, excited by the ideas that I present. So that is the challenge, but it's also the pleasure, so it's the joy.
True.
Yeah.
So how was it like when you were trying to get your first book published? Was it difficult or easy, or anxious or excited? What kind of process was that? It was
a terrifying process. It's not. This wasn't my first novel I'd written. It wasn't even my first young adult novel I'd written. And I got as far as an agent for the first book, which was a book about battle-armoured cats from the future fighting a war in Cambridge, where we're sitting at the moment. In fact, parts of it took place on this very road, Mill Road. And I got as far as finding an agent, and that went nowhere. But while that was happening, I just had this idea for this new book, which I thought, I don't care, I'm just going to write it and see what happens. And getting it published was hard. It was really hard. It's really hard. And I'd just about given up and was about to go the route of self-publishing, because my wife and I had a sort of discussion, because she thought it was the book she read for ages. She just said, "This is a perfect book. This is a perfect book. You must be able to sell it." So I sent it to agents and publishers and everything. No one wanted to know, and I actually started clipping the pages of my things that I sent out in a certain way. And if it came back and it was still like that, it meant they hadn't read it. They hadn't even looked at it. And when I had about 6 come back and none of them had been read, I thought, oh no. So I completely changed my strategy.
Like how?
I always used to send out the usual submission letter, which is, hello, this is me, this is my book, this is where I market it, this is what it's like. The usual letter that you send out, the submission letter. And it got me absolutely nowhere. So I did a different kind of submission letter, which I desktop published a magazine article about me, written by me.
Oh, okay. Self-advertising, yeah.
A big self-advertising, big flashy graphics and photos, and all done in nice columns with an article about me, an article about the book, and all that sort of thing. And I sent that off at the start of 2011, so about January 2011, and
you know how many pages?
It wasn't working. You know, I just thought, what are we going to do? And we had a holiday booked for February, so we went away to Rome for a few days. And the plan was, when we got back from Rome, I was going to start self-publishing.
That was the decision.
That was the decision. We went to Rome, had a lovely time. I didn't even think about the book once. And then when we got back home, as soon as I returned to England and switched on my phone, there was a beep, and I answered it, sort of looked at the email, and it was from an agent. And she said, I'd love to see the rest of it. So I sent her the rest of the manuscript, and we worked on it, and that is then things started happening, and we had a few publishers excited about it.
And then it was just about choosing your publisher.
It was, rather frighteningly, you're suddenly in the position where you get to choose from a few publishers.
Yeah. And when's your first book? I think it's more than amazing. Like.
Yes, absolutely.
At one point, you are just looking for the one and only publisher.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyone.
Yeah.
I'm going to publish this myself. Yeah, absolutely.
That's a nice process. What about the other young adult authors? Like, do you read other young adult authors?
I try to. I mean, I do.
Yeah.
Of course I do. And yes, and I do have favourites. Am I allowed to say? I like Cliff McNish, who has written some incredibly sort of creepy books. I've read a couple of Tim Bowler. He's incredibly evocative, very good young adult writer. I tend to read around the margins of young adult as well. So I don't read things like games.
Okay.
I tend not to go for the big box items. I think the exciting stuff is happening sort of in the not quite so widely marketed, but
talking about the books you've been reading throughout your journey of becoming an author, which books like affected you a lot?
Oh, I think the first time that I knew I wanted to be a writer was after reading Jaws, the book.
Okay.
When I was about 10, and I shouldn't have been reading it, but I suddenly realised that people actually wrote these things.
Yeah.
And the terror that book gave me. I mean, the film was bad too, and that terrified
Especially for a 10-year-old.
Absolutely. But it, so that was the one that made me decide I wanted to be a writer, which, if you ask my poor, long-suffering English teacher at the time, she will tell you, because any story she tried to set me, I would always bring a shark into it, always, just always. I couldn't help myself. And I think Jaws was how I learned to write. I started copying ideas, then I started expanding ideas, and then I found out that what you could do was come up with different stories based upon very similar things. But then I think that there were a couple of writers who completely changed my life. One was Stephen King, just because his writing style was like none other that I'd ever encountered. And then H.P. Lovecraft, the incredible science fiction writer, who didn't write enough stuff in his short and tragic life. They were the people who just made me want to be a writer. But the writer who influenced me the most is Ray Bradbury, without a doubt. I mean, Ray Bradbury taught me how to write stories. He had a little bit of advice, which was just sit down at the typewriter, bang out a title that sounds intriguing, and then spend the rest of the day trying to do justice to that title. And I did that. I did that every day for months. I would write the title of a short story and then write a short story. And sometimes they were very, very short, sometimes they were quite long. But by the end of it, I found that I could sort of write almost at will. If you gave me an idea or a word, then I could do that. Something would come up, and it would always be something surprising, and it would always be something that I learned from. So I think Ray Bradbury was the greatest influence I had. Oh, beautiful. And you know, if I could capture a tenth of his beauty and fluidity of language, but you know, we can try and aspire, can't we?
So when you're writing, like, does your story write itself as you type, or like you write the whole plot down before you write? Like, how does it come out?
It always comes out differently.
Oh, okay.
It always comes out differently. This one.
Like for this one.
This one was I found the original notebook that I jotted the idea for this down in, and I mean, this came about because one day I was I've got a Macintosh desktop computer, and I was up sort of putting the latest operating system on it, and that's an hour out of your day, an hour of your writing a day, and so I thought, I wonder what's going on. So I clicked on the list of things that it's doing, just so I could see, and it seemed to be reusing bits of the old operating system, and I thought, oh, that's fascinating. But what about the other bits that it's overwriting? How do they feel about this?
Okay.
And so I've got this little note. I've got this little note written in a notebook which says operating system human ? And that was it. And then so you've got a gold head. If you have a gold head thought, it's easy.
Yeah.
If you know where your book's going, it's easy. It's just a case of filling in the blanks. But for the second book, it was completely different. I planned it all in advance. I knew where everything was going to be before I started.
Now, probably because it was a sequel.
Yeah, but it's completely
like you
separate.
had the characters ready, like
No, because it's a completely separate sequel. It takes place 1,000 years after this one.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
1,000 years after the events of this one. The whole of civilization's changed quite a lot, although strangely not as much as you'd think. You'd think in 1,000 years there'd be a massive sort of evolution of culture. But it hasn't. It's sort of like today, but just with high-tech gadgets, which is kind of weird. And there are parts of society called Strakerites who believe that the words of Kyle Straker are the words of a prophet, and that one day the events that happened in 0.4 will happen again. And there's a lot of scientists who don't believe in that, and it's sort of it's a play between the two. And the hero of that one is the son of a scientist who's been raised to be a scientist, but likes English literature, and he sets to finding out whether this Strakerite stuff is true, which is quite an exciting one, but that took planning. Every chapter had to be planned carefully, where this one was just a mad race towards an end that I knew. Yeah. So I do both.
Yeah. And how do you deal with writer's block? Like when you're writing, when you get stuck?
I don't think I ever suffer from it.
Oh, really?
I think I think one of the things that you should always do when you write is when you leave the piece of writing that you're working on, is leave it so that you know where you're going the next time. But I think if you can't think where the story's going yet, it isn't that you're blocked, it isn't that you haven't thought about it enough yet. Because I think about everything, I think about my next day's writing, I think about where I want to be at the end of the next day. And if I have point A, which is where I finished yesterday, and point B, which is where I want to finish today, all I've got to do is fill in that middle bit anyway, so there's not enough to get blocked.
So we can say that like when you're writing one book and there is another book.
Always, yes,
in
percolating. Yes, absolutely, absolutely. In fact, all the way.
I think that's a gift. You know?
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Well, the amazing thing is that the human brain, when it thinks about problems, if you sit there and go, oh, how am I going to work this out? So if I do this, I do this. That's not what I do. I never do that. I never do that. If I go, oh, what do I do next? I will go off and make a cup of tea, take a walk around the garden, spend 20 minutes on the PlayStation. And while I'm relaxing, my brain is working on the problem anyway in the background. And then you go back and you go, that's the solution. So I think if you're not sure where to go next, it's just not quite ready. It's not blocked, it just isn't quite cooked yet. You just have to wait a little longer.
Actually, it's like you don't let yourself get stuck.
No, because I just want to be honest, I want to know what's going to happen as much as anyone. Yes, I have goalposts where head for in this one, but you know, all the events that were happening in between, I had a few planned out, sort of loose map points. That will happen somewhere, and that will happen somewhere, and then you head towards it, but you go off on digressions and find out something fascinating that I didn't know, and I think that's brilliant. That's the joy of it. So no, it's.
So just for my final questions. So I personally know some of your readers that are actually trying to become authors themselves.
Oh wow, excellent.
Yeah. So what kind of suggestions would you give to them?
Well, the first one is there's the only. You can enroll on creative writing courses that will teach you very little. The only way you can learn to write is to read and to write. And when you start off, you will write stuff, but when you look back on it, you will wince. I have those stories. I found, my mother gave me a pack of stuff that she found in a cupboard, which were my first ever short stories. From when I was 15, when I was actually going to be a writer, when I said, I'm going to write short stories, this is a short story, this isn't just a story for school, this is a short story that people are going to read. And I look at them and I wince. Because all your first stuff, you're learning everything. With your first story, you're trying to learn everything. You're trying to learn how to do characters, pacing, plot, start the story in the right place, develop tension. You try to do all those things the first time you try it. The first time you learn to ride a bike, you get onto a bike with training wheels on, and you go a couple of pedals and then you stop. But the only way to learn how to write is to write things that are full and finished. So if you want to learn how to write a short story, you have to write a short story. And you can't stop until you've written that story. You have to do a beginning, a middle and an end. It doesn't matter how bad it is. It really doesn't matter how bad it is. Because then the second thing that you do is editing. And editing is just, you know, it was the thing that I hated most, and now it's the thing I enjoy the most. Almost. I still love the writing, but the freedom of editing, because you've got all these pieces that you can then move around, and if you don't like them, you can take them out, or if you think it's good but it didn't quite work, you can find out why. So unfortunately, the way to learn how to write is to write, and keep writing, and keep writing. And it sometimes seems like an exercise in futility. I was writing books and sending them off, and people were just sending them back unread, weren't even bothering. And if you think you're the kind of person who can be rejected 60, I think the previous book was probably rejected 60 times. I think this one was probably rejected 30. If you can get 30 rejection letters and still keep smiling and say, on to 31 then you'll... But sometimes it seems like we're masochistic because you send out things and people send you things back saying, well, what was the point in that? And you,
that's discouraging.
That was quite a good story, I thought. And they sent me, well, that's not the kind of thing we like, and you think, so you get really discouraged, but you've got to be able to pick yourself up and carry on. So write, read, and write some more, I'm afraid. It's all hard work.
And as a final message, what would you like to tell to your Turkish readers?
Well, I'm just absolutely stunned that I translate across cultural and language barriers, and I'm just so happy and glad. And I just want to thank you for reading. It really, sitting here in England, it just makes me very, very happy indeed. It really does.
Thank you for sparing the time and having this little interview with me.
Absolute pleasure.
And before we end, I have a last note to the Turkish publisher. Here in my hand, I'm holding the second book of the series. It's called The Future We Left Behind, and we are impatiently waiting for the Turkish translation. Thank you.